Yes, this was the hardest part.
And you're here during a winter that we're having a fair amount of snow this year. Has the weather been an adjustment as well?
Yeah, but it's better than I thought it would be. Yeah, I'm liking snow here, so it's a good part.
Did you have preconceived notions of what life in America would be like?
Of course, when you apply, you kind of have an image in your mind where you want to go. First of all, after I knew I was going to Newcomb, I looked it up so I don't have a lot of like high expectations or low expectations. So I looked it up. I found out it's a really small town, and my host family told me that the school is like 72 students, and I said, that's the high school? They said, no, that's all the school.
K through 12.
Yeah, I kind of adjusted to the whole thing while I was in Iraq. But the best thing that I liked was the fact that it's safe. Because I had to adjust to the fact that it's safe here, because I'm not used to like trusting people really easily or leaving my door open and like the cars and the doors, and it's very overwhelming to know that you're living in a really, really safe community like that.
And when you both got here, did you find that your fellow students had a realistic picture of what your life was back in your home country, or did they have sort of a narrow view from what they've seen on television and heard in the news?
I can say that the best feature about Americans, especially in our school, is whether they're curious. If they have a picture in their mind, they try to ask you first before they create their own judgments or assumptions. And like, you can't blame them because that's all they see on the media. So like, part of our program here, part of our experience is to tell them what's true and what's not. So it's good that they ask and you can tell them.
Here, because it's a small community and there's no diversity here, most people or students are sheltered. So I think us coming here so we can enrich them from our culture and take from them too. And it has been very good experience for both.
That's been valuable to the other students, Skip, and I imagine that was a big part of the idea to do this.
I think it's been very enriching, but I think like anything that is different, it's a learning curve, and I think there are adjustments. I mean, they've been raised with the same kids from kindergarten right through to 12th grade, and now all of a sudden you're bringing in a tremendous amount of diversity, and Tom, even as you know from last year, probably even greater diversity this year. And so there's been some growing pains just as far as them really feeling comfortable of letting outsiders into their lives. And it's baby steps, and I've seen growth from last year, and I'm expecting growth next year from this year, and we'll continue that process. I remember talking to my wife and we deciding that it's going to take probably at least 6 years for the culture to change. So when those younger kids who are now have 2 years of international students, or by the time they get up to middle school and high school, this is going to be a way of life for them.
And other schools have international students, have exchange students, but so often there are so many students attending the school, there really isn't a chance for all of the students to get to know them. And that's not the case here when you have 70 students K through 12.
And about a quarter of your high school are international students. That makes a big difference. It makes a big difference in the classroom, makes a big difference socially as well.
Has there been an adjustment for the community as well, hosting international students, trying to accommodate them, trying to make them feel welcome? And it must be difficult at times because you're so isolated and so small to make sure that the students can adapt.
Well, you can imagine if you're bringing international students into a place like Albany, you don't even have to use the same families year after year. When all of a sudden you bring them into Newcomb, you only have so many families that could take international students. The first year we had 7. And I will be very honest with you, I was a little disappointed the following year that we were only able to take 5. But next year it's looking like we will have a bigger group than we have either the first or second year. So what has happened is I do think the families have gotten used to having international students. They have seen the benefits of having international students, and they've seen that it has benefited the school and the community. And I think our community is being more open to receiving students. In fact, most of the people who have hosted this year are returning to have another student next year.
And they do this out of their own generosity.
They don't receive a penny. They do it just because they think it's the right thing to do for the students and for the community and for the school.
Now, is part of this also your need to survive? Only 70 students and the enrollment has been dwindling. I think you were at 400 at one point, but now with so few students, is this also part of your effort to try to keep the school alive and survive?
My ultimate plan, I think this is sort of like, I hate to call you guys an experiment, this is sort of the experimental phase of what we want to accomplish, because eventually what we would like to see, and you and I have also talked about this, of having the dorms, and I do believe when we have the dorms, we'll be able to, instead of having 5 or 7, we'll be able to have 25 students, maybe both international students and urban students. But I do know, I'm a realist, if I all of a sudden brought up 25 international students, I think these guys would know it would be too overwhelming to our students.
Yeah. So outcome the number of yours.
That's what it would be. We'd have more international students, and someday we might have more urban and international students than students from Newcomb, and we're not afraid of that. But I think it has to be these smaller steps of getting them used to the globalized world, getting them used to international students, and then hopefully in the next couple of years, as we get some things changed, some federal laws changed, that would allow us then to do a large number of hosting of students.
What obstacles do you still face to try to do that?
We still have a federal law that allows. These students are here from J1, so they're here as really as foreign exchange students. What I would like to see happen, and I think would benefit all of our public schools, because there are, right now today, J1 students, there are probably thousands of J1 students, these foreign exchange students in our schools. The F1 students are, that's an educational visa, and with that educational visa, right now they can go to a private school from from kindergarten right up through 12th grade. But we, in '96, changed the law to say in public schools they can only stay 1 year. And the neat thing is these are tuition-paying students. So what would happen is that income would come to the school districts. So it's a federal law that has to change. And obviously when you're changing a federal law, you're climbing up the hill. But we're working hard on trying to make that happen, because it's the right thing for public schools. Let the international students come to public schools, benefiting the students and the schools.
Right now you have the backing of the state and the teachers union, the largest teachers union in the state. So the next step is to go to the feds and approach them and say,
exactly right.
Can we change this federal law?
New York State School Board is very strongly behind this, and so is NYSU. The teachers union is very strongly behind it as well.
So you would build a dormitory right at the site of the school, in back of the school,
yes,
and host as many as 25 international
yes.
students.
Not even just international, but we also believe what a great environment for an urban student. Can you imagine an urban student in a class of 400 kids in his senior class or junior class or whatever? And can you imagine can't play on a sports team because he's a mediocre athlete, would like to be on the drama, but he's not quite good enough to even be on the school play, and maybe is a very smart kid but gets swallowed up in a class of 30, all of a sudden coming to an environment where he can play all the sports, he's welcomed into drama, and all of a sudden he has that one-on-one ratio almost with our teachers, which is our teachers are wonderful working with our students. And then all of a sudden I think those students will shine and go on forth into college and do great things. So it's more than even just international. Our heart is also for urban students.
How has this experience been for you? Has this rewarded you, and do you believe that now the education you received here is going to enrich you and allow you to do bigger and better things?
Yeah, this has been a very enriching experience, like being exposed to a culture, knowing new people, styles of life, and also the school, as you mentioned, not because you're a superintendent, but the school is,
and not
is
because
really.
I'm your host father.
Yes. The school has really, really good teachers. You can. It's like tutoring. It's like one-to-one. They individualize you, and although the teaching system here is totally different than ours, it has been a very enriching experience.
And for you, just the first half of the school year, you've taken 6 regions.
6 regions. I passed them.
You passed them all.
This is the main.
So that is quite a challenge in itself. But as you mentioned, the classrooms are small enough that you really do have almost one-on-one interaction with the teachers and a personal instruction. How has it been for you, Sammy?
It's definitely been very enriching, because I've always wanted to come and study in the United States. Even after high school, I already talked to Mr. Hults about this, and I told him I might come back for college or for after that, because it's so great that how like we're so developed now academically in English, and like we know the system of studying and how everything is studied here, how they deal with their teachers, because it's hard when you come to a new school. The teachers know their students, they know their style and everything. So you just have to adjust to that for a little while, but then it gets easier.
And Skip, with the enrollment so low, probably people wonder if it will get to a point where you have to look at other options, such as consolidation. I don't know, are you still the smallest school district in the state, or does that honor now go to Long Lake nearby?
It goes to Long Lake nearby.
You no longer have the title.
We have grown. We had 9 new students come into our school district this year. And I'm not ever fearful of consolidation, but the difficult part is again, you've been to Newcomb, you know just how isolated we are. It's very difficult for us to even consider consolidation because, for example, let's even look at Long Lake. Long Lake consolidating with Newcomb. Now you're up to, wow, 140 students, K-12. And as you know, the state's talking about wanting to have, the commission came through with wanting to consolidate schools of 1,000. Well, we'd be consolidating Indian Lake, Long Lake, Johnsburg, Minerva, and Newcomb, and we still wouldn't even get to 1,000 students.
And you would be busing some students quite a long distance.
Unless we built like a central school right smack in the middle of the Adirondacks and built roads in all 5 directions, which would be a little bit impractical.
You're already sharing sports teams with Minerva.
We share sports teams, and not only just sports teams, but I will tell you the five of the school districts we staff development people, we do joint staff development together. I share business managers, we do distance learning. There's a lot of sharing of services I think sometimes people don't understand. You have to. I mean, to survive in the North Country, as you know, you have to rely on one another and you have to share services between one another.
Is the community fully behind the idea of building the dormitory and expanding the program for both international students and students from abroad in the U.S.?
I think they're very realistic. I think anyone would. I think a lot of our people are a little bit nervous about bringing in larger numbers of students, but on the other hand, I think they would much rather do that than look at the options of traveling great distances, and it would be great distances, because going back to what I was saying earlier, Long Lake and Newcomb doesn't really make sense. Long Lake would obviously, if they're going to consolidate, they would probably want to consolidate with a bigger school district. Minerva, the same thing. So it's just because it's impractical to do anything else. I think they were open to this, quote, experiment, but I think it's gone so well. I think a lot of that fear factor is gone, and I think they are very open to dorms and having students come in.
Great. Skip, Rawant, Sabby, thank you very much all for being with us today.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, Tom.
By the way, Arcane Wong, the student from Beijing you met in that story a few minutes ago, loved the Adirondacks so much he stayed and is now majoring in business at Clarkson University. You can send your comments and suggestions to us at journal@mountainlake.org. For all of us here at Mountain Lake PBS, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Production of Mountain Lake Journal on Mountain Lake PBS is made possible in part by
The Development Corporation, Clinton County, New York, à seulement 45 minutes de Montréal. La société offre des sites industriels de premier plan, déjà prêts pour un aménagement ou l'excavation, une forte main-d'œuvre et plusieurs options de financement. Découvrez les possibilités.
NBT Bank, offering personal banking, asset management, and business services from 12 locations in the North Country.